you. It's wonderful to be here. Hello everyone. Bonjour, Annie. I want to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit. And thank you, Joanne, for that introduction. I also want to thank Ron and everyone at ROMA and Joanne and everyone at OGRA for your leadership in organizing this conference each year. It is truly wonderful to be back here. I just want to start by talking a little bit about some things I've been thinking about, and Joanne said a lot has happened over this last year. And in the last year, I have thought a lot about the notion that rural, northern, urban, and suburban Ontario share much, but are different in fundamental ways, and that different people thrive in different environments. I think those are kind of truisms that we bandy about. Having grown up in what was a small town in 1953 when I was born, a town where any outing meant that I saw people that I knew, even if it was just walking uptown, as we called it, and having lived the second two-thirds of my life in a big city, I'm convinced that the truth about that notion of who fits where is more complicated than country mice and city mice. I think it is more nuanced than that. My children all grew up in Toronto. I have one daughter who is truly unhappy. She starts to twitch when she lives outside of walking distance from a subway. I have another daughter, grew up in the same home. She can't wait to get away from downtown when she visits. She loves to come and visit, but she can't wait to get home. So there's a continuum of comfort wherever we call home. Many of you love to come to the city for a couple of days, but the noise and the concrete wear on you. I know that. Some of your children love the peace of their rural home, but they want the excitement of the city for some period in their lives. And I can honestly say to you that the only time that I truly restore myself is in the quiet of the bush in a canoe on a rock. So one of the things I love about this job is that people recognize me, they talk to me. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's not, but it's always a good conversation. And it feels like this massive province is smaller because of that. We need each other, not just because our families move between north, south, rural, urban, suburban, but because we are interdependent. The strength of our geography is its diversity. So our responsibility as community leaders, all of us, is to find ways to bridge the differences in order to nurture greater understanding. And I know that you understand that, and that's why you're here, to have these discussions. It's so important that we get together to discuss issues, share success stories with fellow leaders, and this is a great forum for that. As Joanne said, that this is one of my first meetings as the Premier last year, but this was my first speaking engagement when I was sworn in as Minister of Transportation. I also had the opportunity to speak with you when I was Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and this was my first big event last year. So it's wonderful to see so many of the mayors and municipal leaders with whom I've had the privilege of working over the years. There are many of my caucus colleagues here today now. They're behind those curtains. I don't know if any of them will stick their hands out and wave, but they're all back there, and they're going to come out very soon and answer your questions. But they're here because they know that this is such an important discussion, and their presence illustrates how important rural issues, good roads, infrastructure, all of those, how important those are to our government. So it's an honor to be back just after marking my first year as Premier. A large focus of mine over the past year has been to strengthen our relationships so that we can work together to create jobs in every region across the province. I'm very proud of the relationship that our government has forged with you over the past decade. Je suis fière de la relation que notre gouvernement a établie avec nous au cours de la dernière décennie. That relationship is based on respect and a record of successful partnerships. It's also based on difficult conversations that we have had to have about issues. Just because we have a strong relationship doesn't mean we always agree, and that is as it should be. Part of our record is one of continued investment in Ontario's infrastructure and faith in its people. And that commitment has not wavered. It didn't waver after the recession hit, and it has not wavered to this day. So it was very important to me over the past year to get to every region of the province within my first year in office. And I'm proud to say that I've been to every riding of in the province. Not quite true. I've been to 105 of the 107 ridings, and I've Skyped into the other 2. But I've touched every region of the province and had an opportunity to meet with people. That means I've visited people in the communities that make up all of those ridings. Because I wanted to make sure that your perspectives are reflected in the way that we lead as a government. And your theme this year at the conference, Our Time to Lead, really points to what I believe is so important, and that is that collaboration is the cornerstone of good leadership. I'm not going to pretend that I know the challenges that you face or the aspirations of your communities as well as you do. You have that information. You know that. And I've seen firsthand how hard you work to improve the quality of life for your citizens. I've also seen firsthand when you need support from us, and where you need support from us, and the ways in which we need to find better ways to support each other. And we can, because of the relationship that we've built up, we can work together to address the issues that matter most to your communities. And I know you're going to ask some of those questions, whether in the delegations or today in the Ministers' Forum. But I have heard many of the things that you are concerned about, so we're investing $100 million in our Small Rural and Northern Municipal and Infrastructure Fund to help communities address critical projects. And I know, and just an example of how the relationship plays, I know that you want to talk to us about the allocation of those dollars, and that is where the discussion is at now. We're working with Ontario's horse racing industry to forge a sustainable new path because we know that so many communities across the province rely on that. And we're taking some pressure, we continue to take pressure off of you by continuing our phased upload of social services and court security and prisoner transportation costs. So in 2014 alone, those uploads will save municipalities more than $1.5 billion, and those savings will increase even more as we continue working towards the full implementation by 2018. And we look forward to working with you to ensure that all municipalities, large and small, see the benefit of these investments, because that was always the intention of uploading those costs. Like you, we believe that building up our communities, no matter where you are in the province, that is what is critical. Comme vous, nous croyons que nos communautés doivent se développer, peu importe où vous habitez dans la province. If we're going to grow one Ontario, we need to make sure that every community across the province can prosper. And we want every person, I want every child, whether that child is living in Sioux Narrows or East Ferris or Caledon or Brantford or Ottawa, to have a job, to have the opportunity to get a job, to be able to be fully engaged in the economy and be able to help support their families as they grow up. We know that the best way to achieve that is to continue building the strong partnerships and investing in our greatest resource, which is our people. In fact, people and partnerships, that's what's at the heart of our economic plan to create jobs and grow Ontario's economy. We're bringing businesses, workers, communities, and institutions of learning together to create, attract, and deliver jobs to people in every region of Ontario, in your communities. Government doesn't create jobs, but government can facilitate the processes whereby those jobs are created. And you know that, and again, you know that that's why it's so important that every level of government be working together. So, our plan is it's focused on creating jobs for today and investing in jobs for tomorrow. So there's a long-term aspect to this. We're taking action on 6 clear priorities that I believe will have a positive and a demonstrable effect in your communities. Nous agissons en tenant compte de 6 priorités bien définies qui, à mon avis, auront des répercussions positives et vérifiables sur vos communautés. First of all, we're investing more than $35 billion over the next 3 years in infrastructure. That money will help connect our communities, improve the flow of people and goods across the province, and it will also spur projects that create jobs right now. So job creation now and investment in infrastructure that will provide for economic growth in the future. Secondly, we're investing in skills, training, and second career initiatives so that our already talented workers are equipped with the skills that they need to find good jobs or to get back into the workforce if they've had to leave a job and help them find ways to get back in. We're investing in our youth job strategy so that young people in communities across the province can get the opportunities that they need to build careers and contribute to the economy. As a result of that strategy, more than 7,900 young people have already gained a new placement or a job opportunity. So I just want to pause on that for a moment because I know that there's a debate in academia about whether there's a skills gap or not. I can tell you anecdotally and in conversations that I have had with business people across the province, I repeatedly hear that there are jobs that are looking for people, and we know that there are people who are looking for jobs. So this youth strategy is very, very important. It's about the immediate, it's about young people having opportunities right now, but it's also about young people being exposed to a full range of opportunities in career paths that they might not think about otherwise. And so that's what that investment is about. The next pillar of our strategy is that we're taking a moderate approach to balancing the budget so that we can eliminate our deficit without endangering new jobs and Ontario's economic recovery. The notion that we can right now as a government step back from supporting communities and supporting investment is just not right. In my opinion, from what I have seen and from the conversations that I have had, both with economists and with people who are on the ground doing the work in communities, there needs to be an investment in communities and support for communities and the business climate right now. We're building our knowledge economy so that we can attract even more of the world's most innovative companies to Ontario communities. And we're supporting small businesses across the province with initiatives like our Local Food Act, so that they can expand and create more jobs in our communities, in your communities. You know that agriculture and agri-food in particular is one of Ontario's most important economic drivers. And as Minister of Agriculture and Food, I've challenged the food sector to double its growth and create 120,000 jobs by 2020. And we're not asking that the agri-food sector do that alone. We'll be championing and promoting Ontario's food through our Local Food Act and through the investments through our Local Food Fund, which is a $30 million fund over the next 3 years. So we are partnering with communities and with businesses in order to make these things real. When the economy thrives, then we can better support those who need help so that they can succeed in life too. I've said to many of you, that for me, the economy is the whole environment in which we live. So it's about the job creation and the investments in infrastructure and the support for people. And it's about making sure that we have that right combination of factors in place so that we can deliver health care, so that we can deliver education, so that we can have the social supports in place that make our society strong. So for me, those are integrated. They are not separate. Good jobs give people the opportunity to do more for their families, more for their future, and that's what really matters. Our plan is practical, it's steady, it's balanced, it's focused on building. It's not focused on cutting. It's not focused on slashing, because austerity has a cost. And we are not going to balance our books on the backs of your communities. That is not how we're going to move forward. So I've said relationships are important. Our relationship with you is fundamental, and I've just been talking about that. And there are still many issues that we need to work on together. I know that. But part of my job as Premier is to stand up for Ontario and Ontarians and to make sure that we get a fair deal from the federal government. And I just, I made some comments over the weekend in Montreal at the Liberal Convention, and I made them, they are general, not partisan comments, but I believe that in the same way that it's important that we have a good, ongoing, functional, open relationship with municipalities as a provincial government, I think it's extremely important that the federal government work with provincial governments and with municipal governments so that we've got all levels of government pulling in the same direction. The fact is, Ontario is the leanest government in Canada. Our program spending per capita is the lowest among all the provinces, and we need that federal partner to make predictable investments so that we can grow the economy and create jobs. The federal government, unfortunately, has taken a number of actions on issues that affect communities across Ontario. We've itemized about 110 actions that have had a negative impact on our province. And these are actions that are hurting Ontario in important areas such as healthcare, infrastructure, affordable housing, retirement security. In some cases, in situations where there has been a commitment and that commitment has been withdrawn. And in some cases, it's areas where there hasn't been a commitment in the first place. We are stepping in as a provincial government where we can to find solutions that best serve all of our communities. But as I said, I really believe that we can achieve the most when all three levels of government are working together in a very predictable and in an ongoing way. Mais je crois réellement que nous pouvons accomplir bien plus lorsque les trois piliers du gouvernement travaillent ensemble. So, just as the provincial government must be, and we are working to be a good partner with Ontario's municipalities, I will continue to call on the federal government to be an equal partner with Ontario, so that we can work at all three levels of government to move communities forward. So as I travel across Ontario and visit your communities, I am consistently inspired by the people that I meet. People across Ontario doing amazing things. You know that. The Olympics were certainly proof of that. Dozens of Ontario athletes from New Liskeard to Newcastle did us proud in Sochi. I'm sure that Huntsville is still celebrating Garrett Howell's gold medal victory. And Sault Ste. Marie is excited to welcome the men's curling gold medalists home, and everyone across the province is eager to congratulate our star hockey players. I really believe that all of our athletes were totally worthy of our support and our pride. These are the talents you nurtured in your communities, the people who show us that we are all capable of such great things. So our government will continue to build and implement our plan to invest in a strong economy, to create jobs in every part of this province. That is our #1 priority. I'm here to work. Last year there were lots of questions about my ability to keep the government standing. I'm getting those same questions this year, and I'm going to give the same answer. I'm here to work. I'm here to govern. I want the legislature to work because we have important goals to achieve. And I know I'm the Premier in a minority parliament, but I'm going to keep a steady hand on the wheel while we confront the big issues. And those are young people in this province going to have jobs? Are they going to have the education they need to be prepared for the new economy? Are seniors in our province going to have the care that they need when they need it? Are we going to have transit and infrastructure across the province that 50 years from now, people will look back and they'll say, the government made a good decision. The government really made the investments that were needed, because that's the long-term vision that I think we all need to have. So I'm going to work with whomever will work with me to make sure that we make those long-term decisions and that we do that together. From my perspective, that's what leadership is, whether it's in a municipality, whether it's at the provincial level, or whether it's at the federal level. I think that all of us can buy into the notion that Ontario's greatest days lie ahead if we work together. My team and I will continue to work closely with you. I am so grateful for the partnerships that we have established. I look forward to enhancing those. Thank you so very much for your strong leadership. Thank you for being great partners, and I look forward to the bear pit right now. Merci beaucoup. Thank you,
Well, thanks very much, Joanne, for the very warm welcome, folks. Thanks for the invitation to be back at ROMA and being here this morning. Let me start off to thank Joanne Van der Hayden and also that political rookie Ron Ed for their leadership and success in organizing a tremendous ROMA Good Moves. Let's give them a round of applause. Fantastic. You know, this is going to be a big year. The elected officials here in this room, the mayors, the reeds, the councillors, it's the year that you'll get your performance judged by the electorate in municipal elections right across this province. And for me and my team here today, it could be much the same, depending if the NDP continues to breathe life into a government, quite frankly, well past its shelf date. Today I come here to tell you that there is hope. I come here to tell you today that Ontario can and will do better, because I come here today with a plan. So here it is. On Tuesday, I tabled my Million Jobs plan. We've actually debated in the House on Thursday. And as a start of what I know will put people back to work in our province with good, well-paying, middle-class jobs, not jobs that you're stuck with, but one you can buy a home and raise a family. It's the kind of plan that will bring pride back to rural Ontario, the province as a whole, and make our province strut again. So here are the 5 things that my bill will do. They'll produce more jobs with better take-home pay through lower taxes and less debt. I just believe fundamentally, and you know this too, that well-run businesses are attracted to well-run provinces. It will ensure affordable energy that will actually create jobs, not eliminate them. It will train more skilled workers to meet the huge demand of the trades. And it's going to help young people find jobs here in Ontario again, not Saskatchewan or Alberta. It will increase trade with our neighbors to put more made in Ontario products on the shelves across Canada and in other nations. And very importantly for the discussions that we've had here at ROMA Good Roads, it will end the bureaucratic runaround that inhibits job creation, that eats up your time, that drives up your costs, and inhibits your ability to attract employers to your municipalities. This can be done. And it will be done. The Lord knows it has to be done. Because friends, Ontario right now is in a mess. In January, Statistics Canada updated its job numbers. And we found out that in December alone, our province shed 39,000 more private sector jobs. We did add another 13,000 government jobs, I suspect largely at the provincial level in our agencies. But behind those numbers, you know what that means. You think of Heinz, you think of Kellogg's, you think of employers small and large in your hometowns. Behind every one of those numbers, there's a man or woman who had to go home and tell the kids there's no hockey this year because mom or dad just lost their job. That's what I fight for. My plan is all about. This has clearly got to change. And folks here in this room, you know better than anyone else what's driving up these costs. Because far too often, the province sees itself as your overlord. And is overloading you with too many burdens, too many costs. And I heard this in all my meetings mean, time is money. Time is lost jobs. So in Ontario PC government I lead, it will lighten that load. Now look, I can't promise you bags of money. That's all been spent. But I can tell you the provincial government under my leadership will get off your backs and help you deliver quality public services to your constituents and give you time and a case to attract jobs again. So let me start with probably the biggest way to help lighten the load, the top issue that I've heard about in the halls and in the conference rooms this session. The issue that many of you are wrestling with today and have to have answers come election time late October. And let me start on this topic by stating the obvious that I know you agree. Ontario's provincial police force is filled with great men and women. They daily put their lives on the line to serve and protect us. And we deeply appreciate their commitment to our hometowns. It's no easy task. But as a collective, the cost of the service is the number one concern for most municipalities I've talked to and represented here today. It's the costs, not the quality. And under the previous premier, there was let's be frank about it, an election year contract signed that had a couple of years of freezes and then a big 8.5% increase to make the OPP the highest paid force in the entire province. And on New Year's Day, that increase kicked in. For municipalities like Hermosa, it means a sudden $1 million increase in OPP costs. Many municipal leaders yesterday told me that's going to mean a double-digit tax increase for the whole municipalities. And these kind of contracts, they of course set precedents. It's a snowball that's rapidly gathering steam as it comes down the hill onto your backs. It sets precedents for arbitrators who still refuse to look at a community's ability to pay. They load up public sector service contracts, which means increasing costs next for firefighters, for EMS personnel follow suit. And community leaders like yourselves, huge pressure on your backs to squeeze even more tax dollars out of your ratepayers. So come municipal election day on October 27th, you'll be judged on how you responded, when in reality, the government had your hands tied. So what do you do about it? In April last year, and I think he's here today, Jim Wilson, in partnership with Steve Clark, they introduced a bill standing in the name of the Capacity to Pay Act of the Ontario PC Party to fix a broken arbitration system that's driving up these costs. Something clearly has to be done. Because of their monopoly power, some of the government unions are simply playing a game where they can make big demands up front, knowing that going to arbitration usually gets to the number that was their initial goal in the first place. This burdens not only our ratepayers, but it burdens your ability to plan in your own communities, to grow and succeed. So our Capacity to Pay Act will require arbitrators to respect your ability to pay, to take away this notion that you have bottomless pockets. Now, at the time the House rejected our legislation, of course, we don't have the votes yet. And despite a supposed wage freeze, government salaries spiraled once again, leaving municipalities like yours trying to find more ways to stretch every dollar make ends meet. The government's new billing model now being considered for provincial policing, it actually doesn't solve the underlying problem. All it does is tag some municipalities more and some municipalities less. And it pits winners and losers against each other to fight among yourselves. But it resolves nothing to fix the whole ability to pay your ever-increasing police bill, and nothing to fix the real problem. So let me be clear here today, as I have been the last time I addressed ROMA or AMA. Once we are in power, the Capacity to Pay Act will become the law in the province of Ontario. We will look at local income, local growth, local ability to pay, and stop forcing Mississauga solutions on towns like Mississippi Mills. That's a promise. That said, I also want to give a high five to the colleague from Perth Wellington, Randy Pettigrew. Randy has a motion on the floor of the House Thursday, the same day as my Million Jobs Act. Hope he'll at least 2-0 on the votes on Thursday. Randy's motion, and I appreciate the support here in this room, to finally fix joint and several liability, which at last count, some 157 municipalities across this province have supported this initiative, including AMO as well. I want to commend Randy for bringing that forward, and again under PC government, developing the law of land in the province of Ontario. By the way, is Bancroft Mayor Bernice Jenkins here in the room today? That doesn't sound like Bernice's voice. Now, Your Worship, Mayor Jenkins told me that because of all the red tape on her municipality, she has to fill out some 270 financial reports every year to the province before she gets $1 in provincial funding. 270. That's almost one financial report each and every week. Mayor Jenkins' lovely town of Bancroft, total population of 3,500 people, less than 2,000 households. As part of my Million Jobs Act, and is a big piece of my party's overall economic plan, an Ontario PC government will lighten that load. We'll have the goal of reducing the total rules and regulations that take up so much of your time by at least a third when we're in office. So let me give you some examples of what that means. When it comes to roads, whether it's building good roads or making bad roads good, There is red tape at every turn. It stalls projects, it drives up costs, means less gets done. Joanne was telling me about the 2-year delay in trying to build a bridge across the Thames River in Middlesex County. The 2-year delay due to the M&R's relocation of 48 endangered mussels. You hear about these? You couldn't write this. They had the warm and individual attention from scuba divers to help move those mussels from one rock to another. 48 of them. The crying shame is laughed about. It cost $135,000. 2-year delay. Those must have been some incredible shellfish. Problem is, these silly rules that have swung out of balance, they're costing us jobs. They're hurting our competitive advantage. That means less gets done in your hometown. And all of you have your own examples about this. A lot of it stems from an Endangered Species Act that has simply swung way out of balance. We all support protecting endangered species. We all want to hand out a better environment to our kids and our grandkids. But I worry that it's swung way beyond reason in terms of the costs imposed in examples like this. My colleague Laurie Scott from Halliburton Fourth Lakes Brock, she demonstrated that the Ontario PC is not simply talk the talk and walk the walk. She brought forward a bill to bring back the balance, to ensure that these decisions reflect just basic sense, and they're based on good science, not political science. Sadly, again, we didn't have the votes. It didn't pass the House. But under PC government, we'll make that the law of the land. Restore the balance, protect the species, but help you build roads and bridges at a reasonable cost to taxpayers. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I moved from Middlesex to Halliburton. The problem is, the further north you go, the worse it gets. And we see these Southern Ontario special interests that have a fantasy view of northern life, imposing unreasonable restrictions on Northern Ontario development and growth. You think we got it tough in Southern Ontario? You see the job losses across the north in some communities where one industry towns are being wiped out. The far north act is a classic example of that. Just banning growth in a significant part of our province by imposing these fantasy views. I'll abolish that act. I'll focus on job creation and investment instead. It also means making sure that the Ring of Fire is a priority for the province of Ontario. Not simply preaching to the choir of the north, but the Premier has a role, a duty, to say what the oil sands have been to Alberta, what potash has been to Saskatchewan, so too the Ring of Fire can be the province of Ontario. Great job, great progress. So friends, my Million Jobs Plan is the antidote and the catalyst that Ontario needs to prosper. And I mean all of Ontario. Ontario can and we will do better, but we need action now. So let's get going. And that means looking reality in the eye and making tough but necessary decisions to get our books back in balance. It means a balanced budget is a top priority, starting with the public sector wage freeze across the board, including us as MPPs. A reduction in taxes to spur investment and job creation. And as I promised, a big reduction in the regulatory burden. Big part of my plan, cost-efficient and reliable energy. And what does that mean? It means the end of any new subsidies to wind and solar projects that are driving up our rates, that are punishing manufacturers and Ontario families with higher and higher hydro bills. And it also means that when it comes to these forced industrial wind turbines, only your community and your community alone will decide what wants a wind farm. You decide, not the province of Ontario. That message has been very clear. Here yesterday, here today, right across the province. It is time to stop this madness of high energy costs. And I congratulate those here that are pushing this in your own municipalities. 2 stars in my Ontario PC caucus, Lisa McLeod from Ottawa area, and of course for her rural roots from Huron, Bruce, Lisa Thompson. They have been far from shy in fighting for your priorities, expressing your concerns. a rally yesterday at Queen's Park. And part of an energy plan is not simply electricity. That's a big part. But a big part of an energy plan for affordability is also natural gas. You know, I live in the township of Westlake. I live on an unfinished road. There's no natural gas line in sight, so I get it. In fact, I got my propane bill just a few weeks ago, so I get it in the pocketbook too. My caucus colleague, Bob Bailey of Sarnia Lambton, introduced Bill 97, the Natural Gas Superhighway Act. It did get support at Queen's Park from all parties on the second reading back in September. It's a good thing. And it's a great step forward to say what natural gas can do to lower the cost of business in our province and help us create jobs. And the impact for homeowners can be enormous. It reminds me of what electrification was over a century ago. To me, it seems like modern infrastructure shouldn't simply be roads and subways and bridges. Of course, that's very important. But I think as we look to the rest of the century, it also means broader access to natural gas. And the recent discoveries of huge amounts of shale gas just across the Great Lakes, we need to rethink how we harvest its benefits, how we lower costs to consumers, to farmers and businesses, and help power our economy. I'm excited about this opportunity. I see it as the way of the future. And as Premier, I will ensure all bureaucratic red tape at the provincial level is removed, so this critical infrastructure has a chance of becoming reality and lowering costs across our province. So friends, the choices that we have to make to get Ontario moving again, they're not hard to see. They're just hard to do. But I believe in the people of Ontario. We have the hardest working, most talented industrial people who built and sustained this great province. Whether they're from small town Ontario, like my birthplace of Fort Erie, my mom was a town councillor for 3 terms. North of Fort Francis and beyond to the eastern tip past Cornwall. The great people of Ontario, they would never dream of giving up. And they don't expect their government to give up either. And I am with them. Successful leaders are the ones who embrace the need for change, not those who pretend that that need does not exist. The ideas I laid out in my Million Jobs plan, look, they're not without political risk. But the future of Ontario is too important not to be bold. Like I said, it won't be easy, but it can be done, and it'll be worth it. I didn't get into politics to hedge my bets. I got into politics to put Ontario on the path to prosperity. My political opponents, some of the special interests, they'll oppose our plan. Because they've got it pretty good right now. But for the million people who are out of work in our province, for hardworking middle-class families, they don't have it so good. Let's be clear. The special interests, they'll oppose my plan and our campaign because they know one thing. When I'm elected, things are going to change. And my Million Jobs plan, that's just the beginning. Thank you very much.
Kind introduction. I had the privilege of first meeting Eleanor in the 2010 by-election in Leeds Grenville. And the two of us immediately connected over our shared history of growing up on a farm that raised cattle and produced cash crops. And I think in subsequent conversations I've had with Eleanor over the years, I've dispelled some of the myths about the Green Party that she had and that you may have. First of all, while I love trees, I don't spend my days hugging them. And while I think Birkenstocks probably look like comfortable shoes, I don't own a pair. So today, I want to shatter some of your myths about the Green Party, because I believe Ontario desperately needs the sensible solutions and new approaches to politics that the Green Party offers. And first of all, before I get into that, I want to thank the board members and staff of the Rural Ontario Municipal Association and the Ontario Good Roads Association for the invitation to be here today and for the important work that you do. But most of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today and taking time out of your busy schedules to be leaders in your community. I believe deeply in local democracy, and although we may not agree on all the details of all the policies, I believe the one thing that we can agree on is the essential role that mayors and municipal councilors and municipal staff play in governing our communities and strengthening local democracy in communities across Ontario. So thank you for the good work that you do. Many of the values that guide my green politics come from growing up on a farm. My parents taught me that hard work and perseverance pay off. They also taught me that you need a long-term plan that protects and sustains your natural assets to secure present and future prosperity. So today, I want to talk to you about the Green Party's primary objective, which is protecting the people and places you love by delivering on our top 3 priorities. 1, creating the jobs of tomorrow today. 2, securing your kids' and grandkids' future. And 3, protecting the farmland and water that sustains us all. I believe Ontario desperately needs a bold plan to create jobs for the 21st century, to replace the 300,000 manufacturing jobs we lost in the last decade. We need a bold vision for the future that tackles Ontario's unacceptably high youth unemployment rate. Tweaking the status quo by handing out checks to the companies that have the right connection to the right ministers, the Liberals do, is not a plan that will get the job done. Nor is it good enough to say that somehow we'll magically create 1 million jobs, especially when study after study and practical experience has shown us the lowering taxes on blue chip multinational corporations, as the PCs propose, does not and has not led to more jobs in this province. Unless you're talking about the jobs of multinational corporations have shipped overseas. And I'm not sure if it's worse to have a flawed plan or no plan about jobs, but you can ask the NDP that later this afternoon. The Green Party, on the other hand, has a bold jobs plan that believes our economic transformation must start by supporting small businesses and new entrepreneurs to create innovative new industries and good local jobs that diversify and strengthen our local economies. I will continue to push for lowering taxes on jobs by doubling the exemption level for the employer health tax to make it easier and less expensive for small businesses and new entrepreneurs to create jobs. Ontario has a choice. The province can continue the failed policies of handing out checks and tax breaks to big corporations, as the status quo parties want to do, or we can help our small businesses and entrepreneurs double the number of jobs they create by exempting those jobs from being taxed, as the Green Party proposes. At the same time we are lowering taxes on jobs, the Green Party's job plan believes that Ontario must invest in the jobs of the future today. One of my heroes is Wayne Gretzky. And the great one had a philosophy towards hockey that I apply to economics. And that's when you have to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it is or where it has been. And that's exactly what Ontario needs for economic success in the 21st century. That success is where the jobs are going to be. And it is clear that that is in resource efficiency, clean tech innovation, and low carbon infrastructure. Already the US, Germany, and Japan are revitalizing and expanding their manufacturing sectors by investing in clean tech innovation and advanced manufacturing. Last year at the World Economic Summit in Davos, world leaders called for a $14 trillion investment in clean tech innovation to reduce the spiraling costs of climate change. The highly respected McKinsey Global Institute has identified energy efficiency, clean tech innovation, and the wise use of natural resources as the biggest economic opportunity for business investment and job growth that exists today. And so Ontario needs a jobs plan where our businesses, our workers, our entrepreneurs, both urban and rural, northern and southern, can score a hat trick by being a world leader in the new global economy. And the Green Party believes that starts by rewarding innovation and new business investment with a clean tech investment tax credit to foster job creation in the fastest growing sector of the global economy. And I will push for job training programs and apprenticeship reform so our young people can access those jobs. I believe Ontario can sell sustainable solutions to the world by developing the Ring of Fire, not as a Wild West show that recreates the tar sands in Ontario's north, but as a model of sustainability by requiring efficient and responsible mining practices, energy-efficient provincial processing facilities, comprehensive land use plans, and an equal partnership with First Nations. The Green Party will not play political games with false promises about rising energy prices. Instead, we will make Ontario's homes and businesses the most energy efficient in North America, saving businesses and homeowners money by saving energy. I will continue to push the government to put community interests ahead of corporate interests in the implementation of renewable energy projects so that your local economy can benefit. I will push for changes to investment regulations to make it easier for you to invest in local businesses and social enterprises that make our economies more resilient. And finally, I believe Ontario needs less talk and more action when it comes to supporting local food and farmers. And I will continue to push the Premier to use her new powers under the Local Food Act to require public institutions to buy homegrown Ontario food. And while I'm pleased with the news that Thomas Canning will be moving into the Heinz plant in Leamington, I will continue to push the Premier to establish a loan guarantee fund for homegrown food processors who need access to affordable capital to invest in food manufacturing processing plants. If this government can bail out auto companies, it can support our local farmers and local food processors. Please. Finally, the Green Party's job plan believes it is essential to get our economy moving again by ending the gridlock that is grinding it to a halt. I believe Ontario desperately needs an honest conversation about funding public transit. Not just the Toronto-centric transit plans of the Liberal Party, but transit plans that support communities across Ontario, that includes expanded GO service to places like Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, Niagara Falls, as well as support for Ontario Northland. Let me be clear, this is tough for a politician in today's world, but the Green Party supports new taxes and tolls to fund transit. I believe the two opposition parties are doing you a disservice by suggesting that magic money and fairy dust will fund transit in this province. We all benefit by ending gridlock. The farmer shipping product into Toronto, the tech entrepreneur commuting to Guelph and Kitchener-Waterloo, the student traveling home to North Bay, and the manufacturer transporting product to to the GTHA for export. So the GPO supports revenue tools based on 3 principles. The first is that it be part of a dedicated revenue fund so politicians can't waste the money on things like moving gas plants. Second, that we have a range of revenue tools that are used in a fair, balanced, and progressive way. And finally, I believe those revenue tools should also include demand management tools so we can start addressing gridlock today and not wait until the transit is built. All of our communities need the benefits that come from public infrastructure investments in innovating new industries. A broader tax base, greater demand, more equal and stable incomes, more quality full-time jobs to fund the services and the social programs that provide a high quality of life today and tomorrow as we secure a bright future for our kids. First and foremost, I believe our kids deserve quality education. Yet, we have now had a crisis in education under successive NDP, conservative, and liberal governments. In addition to the disruptions we experienced in our schools last year, I'm deeply concerned by the number of rural schools being closed, the laying off of educational support staff, the lack of services for children with special needs, and the limited availability of special programs, particularly in our rural communities. Instead of cuts in your kid's classroom, I believe Ontario needs a frank conversation about whether we can continue to afford to fund 2 separate school boards, especially when the cost of doing it is over $1 billion a year in duplicate services. I believe it's time to end segregation in our schools by merging the best of the Catholic and public school boards into a single public school system with French and English boards. I believe we owe it to our parents and our teachers, and especially our children, to create a fair, fiscally responsible school system that prioritizes resources in our children's classrooms. We also owe it to our kids to provide them with a good start in life. And I'm deeply concerned that far too many kids wake up every morning and go to school hungry. And I believe we can change our priorities and put our kids first. The Green Party has a plan to reduce poverty and pollution while balancing our budget in a fair and socially just way. By ending the 10% subsidy for electricity consumption that primarily benefits the wealthy, we can afford to fund reforms to social assistance that remove barriers to work and provides financial support for those who most need it. In addition to securing our children's future, I believe we also need to take care of our parents and grandparents. Ontario needs more action and less talk when it comes to funding home care, community care, and long-term care for our seniors so that we invest in a continuum of care for our parents and grandparents. Finally, it's essential for us to not only protect the people we love, but also the places we love. Ontario is blessed with beautiful landscapes, fresh water, natural resources, good farmland. But we can't take this for granted. As the Aboriginal proverb goes, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. I believe we have a sacred responsibility. It's something that my parents instilled in me growing up on a farm, to take care of our land and water, to make sure it is productive for the next generation. As the only political leader in Ontario to sign the Food and Water First Pledge, I understand how essential it is to protect prime farmland and source water. We all need to eat and drink. But after reading the review of the Aggregate Resources Act and the release of the new provincial policy statement, I'm afraid that the 3 status quo parties at Queen's Park don't get it. It's as if they did not hear the farmers and citizens and community groups calling for stronger protection for farmland and water. And I believe this is unacceptable at a time when Ontario is losing 365 acres of farmland every day. This is equivalent of the size of Toronto every year. It makes no sense for this province to destroy the asset base for food and farming sector, which happens to be the largest employer in this province. So I will continue to fight for permanent protection for prime farmland. I'm also calling for stronger source water protection. It's unacceptable and dangerous that another mega quarry can threaten farmland and water in this province without any requirement for an environmental assessment. I will also push for changes that move Ontario from being the least efficient user of aggregates to the most efficient. We simply cannot afford to continue to dig up our farmland, nor can we afford to fill it back up with Toronto's construction waste. I believe most citizens understand the need to protect our food and water from urban sprawl and unsustainable development. I see it in communities across the province as people sacrifice their time and money to stand up for their communities. And time again, the unelected political insiders on the Ontario Municipal Board overturn the decisions of local councils and the efforts of citizens groups. And I believe this undemocratic assault on local planning and local decision making must come to an end. So, thank you. So I will continue to fight to overhaul or disband the Ontario Municipal Board and restore local democracy to land use planning in this province. Together, thank you, together, we have to ask ourselves if Ontario is on the right track. Are we skating to where the puck is going or where it has already been? Ask yourself if the status quo at Queen's Park is working for your community. If the same old parties with the same old ideas can actually change this. I don't think so. That's why I decided to get involved in the Green Party, and believe me, it's not the easy road to election. But it's a necessary road. Because if we don't change, we won't get the change we need. So I believe we need
Party of Ontario, Andrea Orban.
Well, I want to thank Bill for the kind introduction, and before I start my remarks, it's important for me to acknowledge a couple of my MPPs who have joined me today. Monique Taylor, the MPP for Hamilton Mountain, is here, and John Van Tol, the MPP for Timiskaming Cochrane, is here as well. And I'm pleased that they've come to cheer me on in this meeting. I also want to give you my thanks. To thank you sincerely for the chance to talk to you about the challenges that we face, or in fact the challenges, more appropriately I think, is to say that we share in the province of Ontario, because we do share those challenges. Whether you've been elected to Queen's Park or to your local council, you've been given a job to do right by the people in your community. And it's not always easy to speak up for families that elected you. It's a job I take seriously, and I know that you do too. Too many people tell me they feel that they're being ignored, and that the Liberal government just doesn't get the challenges that they're facing. That's especially true in rural and Northern Ontario. These are tough times for people across the province, but many of the communities that you represent have been hit especially hard. Each month, more families are being squeezed out of the middle class, and that's a problem for all of us. A healthy middle class is the backbone of our economy. If people have good jobs and can pay their bills, they are reinvesting in Ontario. But if families are struggling to pay the bills and find jobs, Ontario is in for some struggles as well. It's time to start responding to those families, respecting the challenges that they're facing, respecting the value of the money that they sent to Queen's Park, investing it responsibly on their priorities, and living within our means. Putting their priorities, jobs they can raise a family on, being able to open their bills every month without fear, at the top of our list. And one of the keys to that, one of the keys that Queen's Park often keeps forgetting, is acknowledging the unique challenges facing families in rural and small-town Ontario, and not trying to impose one-size-fits-all solutions from a bubble in Toronto. It's pretty basic stuff. We can tackle the challenges you're facing as municipal leaders and ensure a better future for the families you represent. And it starts with respect. You know, for me, growing up, a good job meant that my family felt secure. We could pay the bills, still have something left over at the end of the month. In fact, we could find time to head out once in a while on day trips on weekends. Because my dad had a good job, it meant that I had the opportunity to go to university, so long as I was willing to work while I was there and wait tables to pay my way through. That's pretty simple stuff, but it is truly the backbone of what makes this province work. And for a lot of families in Ontario today, it's getting harder and harder to come by. Ontario's unemployment rate is stuck well above the national average, and in communities throughout Ontario's southwest and north, it can be even higher. Our electricity bills and auto insurance rates are the highest in Canada, and household debt is climbing to record levels. That's a challenge for all of us. The families that make our province work need stable jobs, and that's going to require some smart investments. Now, I know that some argue that corporate tax cuts, spending cuts, and lower wages are all that's needed to turn Ontario around. But a race to the bottom is not the path to prosperity. Families need us to make smart investments, but they also need us to respect the money that they sent to Queen's Park. To stop the irresponsible spending, the thoughtless waste, and focus on the priorities that matter to them. That means setting priorities. That means investing responsibly. That means changing the way things have been done in Ontario. Northern and rural Ontario need more than nice words and vague promises. We need to focus on what works in the real world, and we need to recognize that the people of downtown Toronto, or Hamilton for that matter, aren't facing the same challenges as farm communities, for example. And it does really come down to that one word: respect. Decision makers in Toronto need to respect the unique challenges that you face and that your communities face. And they need to open their ears and listen to concerns, not simply dismiss the concerns that you bring to them out of hand. Now, I'm lucky. I consider myself very lucky that in our diverse caucus, I've got some strong voices for rural communities and for smaller municipalities, including the most recent addition, Wayne Gates, because he's the MPP not just for Niagara Falls, but also he's the new MPP for Fort Erie and the new MPP for Niagara-on-the-Lake. And Wayne understands, just like our other 21 MPPs do, that one-size-fits-all thinking doesn't often work. We respect the unique challenges rural communities face. Getting more doctors to rural communities, ensuring rural hospitals have funding to meet their unique challenges, recognizing that rural roads and bridges require a little extra care and attention and investment. If we're going to have a province that succeeds, we need to focus on what works, and that starts by understanding that one-size-fits-all policies don't work everywhere. when the government slashed the Slots at Racetracks program without so much as any consultation, it left families across rural Ontario in the dust. Committed, professional people were suddenly faced with an agonizing decisions, feeding their families or feeding their horses. Worse yet, the government added insult to injury by branding a commercial partnership as a subsidy. But that's just one example. We see the same lack of respect when the government claws back the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund without any notice. Or when MPAC unilaterally changes property tax assessments for industrial properties and leaves Reeves and councils scrambling to pick up the pieces. Or when families in small communities and rural areas across Ontario have literally thousands of dollars taken right out of their bank accounts by Hydro One without any explanation, any apology, or any refund. That is not acceptable. Northern and rural Ontario feed and build our province and drive our economy. So it's time for some respect. Now, I've been listening closely to what families have to say as we confront overall Ontario's infrastructure challenges. And I know you've been listening as well. You won't find many people who disagree that we won't be able to attract investment and create jobs if we can't move goods and people around. Or for that matter, if electricity is so expensive that businesses cannot afford to pay for it. These are two important points that I'm hearing loud and clear. First and foremost, people are telling me infrastructure isn't just a Toronto problem. Across Ontario, from the Ring of Fire to border communities like Windsor, to hundreds of small communities worried about aging bridges and crumbling roads, smart investment is needed. And in fact, I recall yesterday a particular delegation described it as investment is needed in infrastructure from Kenora to Kingston. And this government, let's face it, has made some pretty big mistakes. Whether it was a short-sighted attempt to pull the plug on the ONTC and undermine transportation in Northern Ontario, or privatize winter road maintenance, which has left homes and businesses snowed in for days this past winter. People are being asked to accept cutbacks that government would never even attempt in other parts of the province. So when the same government insists that it can't afford to keep the ONTC running, while spending $1 billion not to build power plants in the GTA, somebody needs to be giving their head a shake. And something has to change. We are ready. We are ready to work with you to tackle these challenges. You know, during the last election, New Democrats committed to investing $35 million over the 3 years to pay for much-needed infrastructure projects across the province. And we also committed to an extra $210 million over 3 years to help specifically rural and northern municipalities with road and bridges and culvert issues that you're facing. We've been consistent in our commitment to a municipal infrastructure fund, and we will continue to be committed. But it is also time to take some smart steps to protect the assets that we already have. Roads and rails are the lifeline connecting communities, and we need to know the state of their health. New Democrats are on the same track with you when it comes to supporting a program that helps municipalities to collect and share information about your transportation networks and your infrastructure, and standardizing data so that we have accurate information about the state of roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that people rely on. We also need to think very carefully when it comes to respecting the assets that we have. Now, you've heard other parties talk about the benefits of selling off publicly owned assets. But really, you only have to see what's happened with the ONTC to see how well that's worked. The Liberal government insisted that selling Ontario Northland would save millions. And instead, as the Auditor General has made it very clear, it would cost Ontario families and businesses over $820 million to sell that off. But those are just some of the obvious costs. Does anybody really believe that it makes sense to undermine Northern Ontario's transportation infrastructure, especially, exactly, in fact, when we most need good jobs that come from resource opportunities like the Ring of Fire? It's the same thinking that leads some to sit on their hands when Heinz closes up shop and moves hundreds of jobs out of the community like Leamington. It's an inability to respect the unique challenges facing northern and rural communities, and it has to change. We have to respect the families that make Ontario work from one end of this province to the other. You know, over the last 10 years, the Liberal government has asked middle-class families to pay more and more and more, even while they've made it clear that they're planning new tax loopholes for Ontario's wealthiest corporations and tax cuts for Ontario's wealthiest individuals. Apologies if there's any of those folks in this room right now. But now, after 10 years of that kind of squeeze on the middle class, the Premier intends to plow ahead with an unfair hike in gasoline taxes or new road tolls, perhaps both. For their part, the Hudak Conservatives have indicated that they're open to the idea of new privately owned and operated style road tolls. Now, from a party that sold the 407 and left drivers paying a massive bill, that probably shouldn't be too surprising. But New Democrats have been very clear on this. We will not support new taxes, tolls, or fees on middle-class households. I believe it's time to respect voters who sent us here. We're going to put the fight for jobs you can raise a family on, front and center at Queen's Park. We're going to respect the value of the hard-earned tax dollars that families send to Queen's Park and ensure that every penny is spent on their priorities. You know, we've worked very hard in this minority government to deliver results for families. Families were frustrated at being asked to pay more and expect less from a cash-strapped government. And we pushed hard to close corporate tax loopholes and create a fairness tax so those who could most afford would help to pay a little bit more to deal with Ontario's financial challenges. Families told us that rising fees and climbing bills were chipping away at household budgets. So we pushed for a plan to lower auto insurance rates by 15% and get hydro bills under control. People told us they didn't think health care would be there for their loved ones when they needed it the most. So we pushed for a guaranteed wait time for home care and funding to protect hospital services in rural communities. Across Ontario, people are tired of a government that just doesn't seem to respect the value of the money entrusted to them by taxpayers. So, we worked to establish a financial accountability office and rein in sky-high executive salaries across the public sector. Now, we're proud of what we were able to deliver, and we're going to keep working hard to come through for people. There is no contradiction, none whatsoever, between effective economic development and effective social investment. We can build strong healthcare systems, create good jobs, and a strong social safety net, all the while maintaining competitive tax rates. We can achieve these results by avoiding sweeping promises and sloppy solutions, and instead, we can focus on delivering change, one affordable, small step at a time. Now, there is no doubt that these are challenging times for our province, but there is hope too. We have a golden opportunity to confront and correct the mistakes of the past, to reject old ideas that simply are not working, and to build wealth for rural and small town Ontario now and into the future. And I look forward to taking up that task with all of you here in the room today. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure to welcome my friend and colleague from way back, he used to be our CAO of Hillsborough County, none other than Nigel Belshing.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again to be moderator for the OGRA ROMA Ministers Forum for 2014. And this joins in, my name is Nigel Belchinger. I've met many of you before. My first pleasant task is to introduce the ministers. And we have a particular order, and let me see if I can get it right. It's probably quite difficult for you to stand, ministers, because it's rather tight back there. So when I introduce you, if you just wave, and also I'd ask you to hold your applause until the end. So in the far left-hand corner, that's your left, my right, Mr. Jim Bradley, Minister of the Environment. Next to him, Mr. Michael Chan, Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Sport. Beside him, Mr. Bob Shirelli, Minister of Energy. And we've had a change in terms of seating. They do this to keep me on my toes. It's very good like this. This is Minister Yasir Naqvi, who's Minister of Labor. Minister? Now, moving over, Minister Linda Jeffrey, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Minister Brad Duca, Minister of Training, Colleges and Universities. Minister John Garrison, Minister of the Attorney General, or Attorney General is the proper term, right? And Dr. Eric Hoskins, who's Minister of Economic Development, Trade and Employment. So, next, to my far right over here, which is your far left, and pardon my back, Jeff Leo, Minister of Rural Affairs. Beside him, my MPP at home in London and Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, Deb Matthews. Madeline Mayer, Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services. And on her left, Minister Glenn Murray, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. Minister Murray. On the far right, Minister Charles Sousa, who's Treasurer and Minister of Finance. Next to him, Minister Teresa Peruzza, Minister of Children and Youth Services. Beside him, Minister David Oraziati, Minister of Natural Resources. And last but not least, in her capacity as Minister of Agriculture and Food, Premier Kathleen Wynne. So please welcome.
More tax revenue tools, there is only one taxpayer. We need a new redistribution of provincial tax dollars.
Will you commit your government to a new, extensive and comprehensive service delivery review with public and municipal consultation to be completed by the end of this year and get off the backs of municipalities?
Before the Premier responds, I would like to reconfirm that she is here in her capacity as Minister of Agriculture and Food. Otherwise, every question could be put to her. So don't be surprised if she directs the question to one of the other ministers.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the Minister of Finance to address that issue.
Well, I appreciate the question. I'm not sure I tend to agree with the way it was stated, because I think we all recognize that we are in partnership in the things that we do. We have uploaded over $2 billion, folks, and you all know that full well since the time we've been in office. And we're continuing to work alongside municipalities to ensure that we provide support, and we agree there is only one taxpayer. That's the whole point of the partnership. We have to make certain that when we do this, we've increased funding 3 times since 2004. And we're going to continue doing what's necessary to provide the supports for municipalities by providing dedicated funding, for example, with $100 million roads and bridges fund. We're going to continue doing the services required to fulfill what we feel is necessary for you to have predictable funding. We get that. As Treasurer of the province, you also appreciate that we have some fiscal challenges. And only by working together can we exceed and fulfill those commitments to our municipalities and to our communities. And I'm asking the same from the federal government. We're asking for a collaborative approach. We have been consulting, we'll continue to do so to ensure that the needs of your communities are fulfilled, just as we want the federal government to ensure that the needs of all of Ontario is fulfilled. And when you get cuts to the tune of $1.4 billion that happened this year unilaterally without consultation, now that hurts. and we want to make sure that that doesn't translate to our communities as well. So we will work with you, and we appreciate the collaboration. Thank you.
Minister, thank you. Microphone number 2, please.
Thank you, ministers. Good afternoon. My name is Rick McGee, Mayor of the City of Forth Lakes, and a proud member of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. My question is to Minister Milroy, and in the minister's absence, to the Honourable Linda Jeffrey, Minister of Municipal Affairs, and perhaps Minister Sousa would like to take a swing at it as well. Bill 34 is a bill that provides amendments to the Highway Traffic Act that will enable municipalities to collect in excess of $1 billion of outstanding Provincial Offences Act fines. The bill was introduced in March of 2013 and is currently at second reading. We understand that that second reading requires 12 hours of debate and has currently received 3 hours of debate. It appears to be mired in legislative gridlock. Question to you, Minister, is can you and your government, in conjunction with the opposition parties, move this legislation through the legislative process and enact this enabling legislation to allow us municipalities to collect more than $1 billion from people who choose not to pay their fines so that we can utilize that money for municipal services and renew government infrastructure, roads, and bridges?
Minister Murray.
Okay. No, we can't. Not without the cooperation of the opposition. We have Bill 69, Prop Payment Bill 141, the infrastructure bill, which is very important to that, and this bill, which will deliver very significant new revenues to municipalities. When you're talking to people in the opposition parties, this should be a nonpartisan issue. Every party says they support it. Only our government is pushing it through. So I wish the answer was yes, but no, we can't. So you probably can help get this through.
Thank you, Minister. Mike.
The question today is to the Minister of Natural Resources. Minister Rossetti, you're aware that many municipalities across eastern and northern Ontario experienced significant emergency events due to severe flooding in the spring of 2013. You also are aware that several municipalities requested that the Minister of Natural Resources undertake a comprehensive examination of the events that led to the significant flooding last year to help plan for future potential flood events. As of today's date, I'm not aware of any comprehensive review having been undertaken by the ministry. We also are aware that we received record snowfall this year in Ontario. Can you tell us today what steps the ministry has taken to review previous flood events and to help plan for the prevention and mitigation of similar emergency events in the future?
Minister.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the question. Certainly a question top of mind given some of the emergency preparedness requirements as of this past year in many communities, certainly with the ice storm here in Toronto and with the events that took place in your community. And I was as well, and did have the opportunity to visit the area and speak to my staff about the monitoring. And as you are aware, MNR's responsibility is primarily with respect to the flood control and flood monitoring and management of the area, and also ensuring timely reporting to municipalities so that they understand and have all of the information that they need in a timely way. I have asked staff to review the events. That is underway, and that is taking place with respect to the concerns that you've raised. And you did also raise the issue around the heavy snowfall this year, and I can certainly say that that is something we are watching closely. And of course, you know, the challenges with predicting the weather these days and the implications of what that means to communities is getting more challenging. And we have to do all we can as communities and as a province to help support municipalities with the information that they need. So I certainly respect where you're coming from, understand the question. My staff will be back to you, or I will be back to you with more information about the specifics of the events that you're referring to. If you have further specific questions about particular staff or areas where there were issues that developed or arose, I'm happy to sit down with you separately from this conference and talk to you about that.
Thank you, Minister.
Proudly the Vice Chair of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. My question is to Minister of Finance, Mr. Sousa. Minister, your parliamentary assistant, MPP Stephen Del Duca, has introduced the Private Members Bill 69, as he spoke, deliver permanent, predictable, formula-based,
funding for small, rural, and northern municipalities so we can continue to invest in our communities.
Governor, I got the question, and my answer is yes.
So that's $10 million to each municipality.
Mr. Bradley, Minister of Environment. This is regarding the dry clean program, what we call the e-test.
Thank you, Nigel. It's Ron Holden, Mayor of the Township of Great Lakes, and we're working with the beautiful county, United Counties of Leeds and Granville. My question is for Minister Bradley. Minister, it is important to Ontario municipalities that Bill 91, the Waste Reduction Act, be moved to committee for further debate and refinement. What more are you doing to move Bill 91 forward, and how can we, as municipal sector, continue to help you? Thank you.
Mr. Bradley?
Another good question, and this is one which is a dilemma. I have had the job at one time of government house leader. I've also had the job of opposition house leader, so I can see it from both perspectives. There's no question about it. There has been very extensive debate in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. That is determined largely by opposition parties, as it was when we were in opposition. There has been more debate on this bill, I think, than any other bill I can think of. This before the legislature at this time. Many organizations, including the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, have urged that it go to committee. I think the committee stage is exceedingly important. First of all, I think there have to be hearings where people at various organizations such as AMO and ROMA are able to make known their viewpoint on this particular legislation, which I think will be very positive for the province. In addition to that, there are those who are opponents of particular aspects of the bill. They should have that opportunity. Then there should be an opportunity for amendments to be made to the legislation based on what we've heard and how the bill can be improved. Again, you certainly have my commitment that we're prepared to move the bill forward. I sent a letter to the two opposition critics, at least to the Democratic Party, the other party, the official opposition, have said they're not interested in moving forward with it at this point in time the way we'd like. So I sent it to the third party, and I hope that everybody will see some merit to going to committee, making the necessary changes, and having a bill that will be acceptable to all people in Ontario, particularly to municipalities who called for this action for years.
Thank you, Minister. Microphone number 1.